أهلا بكم مشاهدينا مشاهدي سكاي نيوز عربية إلى حلقة جديدة من بصراحة. أرحب بكم، أرحب بضيفي رئيس ومؤسس جمعية إغاثة أطفال فلسطين ما تعرف ب PCRF السيد ستيف سوسبي. أهلا وسهلا فيك معنا بصراحة.
شكرا.
طبعا يقول السيد سوسبي: مهمتي أن أساعد كل طفل في الشرق الأوسط بحاجة لمساعدة، أن أوصل لهم رسالة بأن الحب، بأن الرأفة يمكن أن تتغلب على الحرب، على الكره. هذه رسالة سوسبي. من هو ومن هي جمعية إغاثة أطفال فلسطين، واليوم أطفال سوريا والعراق وأطفال الشرق الأوسط؟ نتابع معا تقرير تعريفي ونعود. كانوا ولا زالوا أطفال فلسطين يحتاجون إلى المساعدة، خصوصاً في مخيمات اللاجئين المنتشرة في الداخل الفلسطيني وفي الشتات. PCRF اختصار لاسم جمعية إغاثة أطفال فلسطين. هذه المؤسسة غير الربحية التي تأسست منذ نحو 20 عاماً، قدمت خلالها خدمات طبية وصحية لعشرات الآلاف من الفلسطينيين، كان للأطفال الحصة الأكبر منها. تعتمد الجمعية على التبرعات وعلى المتطوعين الذين يشكلون الجزء الأكبر من فرقها الموزعة في عدة بلدان في العالم العربي وخارجه. خلال العام الفائت بلغ عدد المستفيدين من الخدمات الطبية للجمعية حوالي 7000 حالة مرضية، وتم نقل العشرات من المرضى للعلاج في الخارج مثل الولايات المتحدة التي استقبلت العدد الأكبر، والإمارات والأردن وأوروبا. وتم إجراء عمليات جراحية لعشرات الأطفال من غزة من المصابين باعتلال خلقي في القلب. كما أجري 1500 عملية جراحية في الضفة الغربية وقطاع غزة وبيروت، إضافة إلى أن جمعية الإغاثة أنشأت عدة مراكز صحية وعلاجية ثابتة مجانية، مثل مركز هدى المصري لعلاج السرطان في غزة، وهو المركز الوحيد المجاني المتخصص بعلاج هذا المرض، ومركز الأطفال لعلاج القلب في مدينة القدس الذي أجرى 1700 عملية كبرى لأعمار مختلفة من المحتاجين. طبعا هذا غيض من فيض من نشاطات جمعية إغاثة أطفال فلسطين. السيد سوسبي معنا، نسأله أكثر، نتعرف عليكم أكثر. ستيف، أنت كنت صحفي، صحفي أمريكي، أتيت إلى الشرق الأوسط، أتيت إلى فلسطين لإجراء عملك كصحفي، كتقارير صحفية، ولكن وإذ بك اليوم ومنذ 20 سنة وحتى الآن تقوم بهذا الفعل الخيري. قمت بمؤسسة مهمة لإغاثة الأطفال. ما الذي دفعك لتغيير اتجاهك بالحياة؟ لماذا تفعل هذا اليوم؟
I first became a journalist because I wanted to tell what I first went to Palestine in 1988. I had the opportunity to see the truth of the Israeli occupation and how Palestinians were resisting in the first Intifada. And I became very connected and attached to the Palestinians from a human perspective. People there were very proud, very hospitable, and also enduring extreme circumstances of life under occupation. I wanted to be somebody who could show and tell their stories to the American people. As an American, going there and seeing their struggle was different from how the media in the United States was conveying that message. What I saw on the ground in the West Bank and Gaza during the first Intifada and how it was being reported in the United States were two opposite things. And so I wanted to be a writer, and I wanted to be able to convey the truth from what I saw. that the Palestinians were under occupation, their land was taken from them, they were struggling for basic human rights, they were struggling for freedom and for justice, things that I was born and privileged in my country to have without having to struggle for, and very basic human values that I believe in very strongly. Freedom is a value that everybody should have.
هل كان لديك أي فكرة بأن هذا هو الوضع بالفعل بفلسطين، أم كنت مثل كل يعني من يعيش في خارج فلسطين في العالم الغربي لا يعرف حقيقة الوضع؟
I was raised in an environment in my hometown of Kent, Ohio, with the idea that, and believing very strongly in social justice. So I knew the history of the Middle East, and I studied the Palestinian issue and the Middle Eastern issue. So I understood before I went to Palestine the truth of what happened there in 1948, al-Nakba, and before. I mean, the struggle in Palestine began with the Balfour Declaration in 1917. So I understood it from a historical and from a political perspective, not one based in being, let's say, taking one side. I had an open mind. I wanted to understand the truth and to put it in the context of the very basic values that I mentioned, which is freedom and justice for everyone. Not because you're one religion or you're one race or you're one nationality, you have the right to have more privileges and more rights than somebody else. Everybody should be equal. So when I went to Palestine, of course, when I first went, I understood it from a historical and as a student in the university. But when I went, I saw it from a human perspective. You start to meet people, you know their stories, you become friends, you have a human and an emotional connection with people, which is different from reading the history in the books. When I had that experience, I wanted to tell those stories. I didn't want to write about politics because that's already covered and that kind of dehumanizes the issue. I wanted to talk about people who had their homes destroyed, people whose fathers were in prison without trial, children who were being injured, farmers who were having their land confiscated. These, and from their human perspective, that they were no different from me and from my neighbors back in the US. They loved their children, they wanted to live decent lives in security and to educate their families and just basic values that we all share.
وأين كانت نقطة التحول من الصحفي المهتم بالجانب الإنساني إلى عامل إنساني؟
That's an interesting question. So during my work as a journalist, I was covering these stories, the human stories. I heard about a boy, a 10-year-old boy from Hebron who had lost his legs and lost a hand and lost an eye from a bomb. He was having lunch with his family and an Israeli soldier had tossed a grenade near the family and it exploded and all of the family was injured, all of his brothers and sisters, but this boy had suffered the most severe injuries. I went to meet him in Maqasid Hospital in Jerusalem and became friends with him. He was a very cute boy, only 10 years old, full of spirit and energy and just there was some kind of human connection between me and him. I was
What
only
was his name?
Mansour Abu Snini. So I was only 23 years old and he was 10 years old. I didn't speak Arabic, he didn't speak English. We were from different worlds, but somehow there was a connection. And I wanted to help him. I mean, I did his story, I wrote about how he was injured and it was, you know, published in some magazines, but I wanted to do something for him. He was in a wheelchair without legs and I became friends with him and his family. They were very poor and I said, let me see if I can help this boy as his friend. So I arranged for him, I went back to where I'm from and showed his picture to a doctor, a Lebanese-American doctor who was able to organize this boy's treatment for free. And in May of 1990, I brought Mansour over to the US and it was the first, on my own, it was with some people who helped to raise money for his plane ticket, but he was the first injured Palestinian to come to the US during the first Intifada. And it was a big story. It was in the front page of the newspapers where I'm from in Cleveland and Akron, Ohio. It was on television. And it was accomplishing two things for me. It was helping this boy get new legs and get medical care he couldn't get in Palestine, which was the most important thing. But it also was starting to show people the human side of the Palestinians, that this was just a boy and who was injured under occupation by soldiers who were funded and supported by American tax dollars.
هل تنفع فقط مثل هذه التوعية أم أن الموقف يعني الببليك الجمهور الأمريكي بشكل عام، حتى لا نعمم، كنسبة أكبر منطلق من موقف سياسي لن يتغير مهما كان في توعية.
No, I think things are changing. I think it's been a slow change, but I think that the majority of Americans now, in my opinion, are slowly understanding that what's happening in Palestine and in Israel is an issue of human rights, and it's based on the fact that the Palestinians are oppressed. It's, of course, there's a strong propaganda effort to change this narrative, to constantly drum home the idea of religious extremism or terrorism or these issues, which are not true. But I think because of social media and because the ability of people to show what's happening on the ground, not through traditional media. When I started writing as a journalist, there was no cable television, there was no CNN. There was just very few avenues for showing what was happening. So it could be controlled very easily. Today, everyone can be a journalist. If you have a cell phone, we saw with the terrible killing of Mohammed Abu Qadir, people videotaped them taking him from the street. These weren't journalists. These were just security cameras or people on the street who are able to show the reality and the truth. And we don't have to depend on journalists who have their own point of view and their own bias and their own prejudice. Everybody now can show what's happening on the ground there, and that's why things are starting to change.
ستيف، من يتحمل مسؤولية عدم انتشار هذه الصورة بشكل صحيح؟ وسائل الإعلام الغربية فقط كصحافة وإعلام، أم أيضا وسائل الإعلام العربية، أم الجمهور العربي صاحب الحكاية؟
I think all of us, the Arab media and every individual who knows what's happening there and who's able to share information, and that's today everybody can share information, has a responsibility to constantly try to educate people who don't know, who are not aware, who might have an idea that is not based in reality. So if you have friends or neighbors, or you're part of a social network, or you're just responsible with a larger audience like yourself, it's your responsibility and it's our responsibility to constantly try to let people know the truth. And that's, in my opinion, the most important thing that we can do these days, is because when people see what is really happening and what the truth is on the ground, then human nature is, in my opinion, good.
تؤمن بأن الطبيعة البشرية خيرة بالنتيجة؟
Of course, I think it's based on, in my work and in my life experience, I work with thousands of doctors who volunteer their time to come into very dangerous areas away from their families. They're not Arabs, they are just doctors, and they come because they want to help. And so I know from my experience that the vast majority of people are good inside. And what changes people and what makes these issues of war and hatred, it's based in fear. But fear is a weakness, and love is the strength that we all have. And I think it just takes time for us to understand that there is no reason to be fear. We have a life to live, and at the end we all have to face our God and to answer how we lived our lives. And once we get past fear, we will all treat each other with respect and with love and with peace.
كلام جميل عميق. تسمح لي روح لفاصل قصير نتعرف أكثر على جمعية إغاثة أطفال فلسطين بالضبط، كيف تعمل وكيف يمكن أنا مشاهدين وكل من يسمع أن يساعد. بعد فاصل.
Whatever they need that they cannot get in their country, our organization arranges that treatment for them, puts them with host families. The vast majority, of course, in Palestine and in Syria and other places don't have the means to get treatment. Are not an organization that's political or religious. We take any child, whether they're Syrian or Palestinian or Lebanese or Iraqi. We take any child, whether they're Christian or Muslim, Shiite or Sunni. It doesn't matter to us. We're a humanitarian organization, and these are children. A lot of children in Gaza are not able to get permits to go out for treatment in that hospital because of the situation, because of the Israeli policy of permits and issuing permits and whether they give to people or not.
أنا
أنا أم نور الدين، هذا ابني نور الدين عمره 2.5 وأنا من قرية اسمها دير ضعيف قضا جنين. عندي مشكلة نور الدين في المسالك البولية. وقت ما خلفته اكتشفوا الأطباء إنه عندي هذه المشكلة. أنا تعرفت على العائلة عن طريق الكمبيوتر، لما سافرت أمريكا بالمطار كانوا في استقبالي، والحمد لله رب العالمين كانوا ياخذوني يجيبوني في متطوعين ياخذوني ردين وعلى المستشفى، والحمد لله رب العالمين كانوا كلهم ما شاء الله محترمين. الحمد لله بعد العملية حالتنا النفسية أنا وأبوه تريحنا وهو، وبالنسبة للحركة والمشي واللعب والحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله انبسطت كثير بعد ما عمل عملية. بتمنى إن شاء الله حياة سعيدة لنور، وبتمنى إن شاء الله بالمستقبل إنه يكون طبيب إن شاء الله رب العالمين.
أهلا بكم مشاهدينا. نتابع معكم بصراحة مع ضيفنا ستيف سوسبي الذي أسس ويرأس الآن جمعية لإغاثة أطفال فلسطين، إغاثة طبية تعتمد على التطوع. اليوم يتوسع إلى أطفال سوريا وأطفال الشرق الأوسط بشكل عام. كل من يحتاج لمساعدة طبية ليس لديه القدرة المالية أسرته وهو على تغطية تكاليف هذا العلاج. PCRF أو جمعية إغاثة أطفال فلسطين تتكفل بهذا الأمر. طبعا ستيف، نحن نمر بأوقات جدا صعبة في الشرق الأوسط، بلدان كثيرة أطفالها تعاني، فلسطين، سوريا، العراق، لبنان. يعني نحمد الله على البلدان الأخرى التي ما زالت قادرة على العطاء ووضعها مستقر وأفضل. ماذا تقدمون؟ ما هي طبيعة البرامج؟ من تساعدون وكيف؟
We do three main programs in the PCRF. First is to send children outside for medical care for free. We've sent over 1,200 children from Palestine, Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, and Jordan to the United States, to Europe, and to parts of the Middle East for free medical care, open heart surgery, prosthetics, plastic and reconstructive surgery, orthopedics, whatever they need that they cannot get in their country. Our organization arranges that treatment for them, puts them with host families. Our chapters and our volunteers take care of them in places like Chicago or Los Angeles or Atlanta, Dubai, and in Jordan, for example. In addition to that, we also, and we are the main organization doing that, we're also the main organization bringing in surgery teams into Palestine to operate on kids in local hospitals all over the West Bank and Gaza in specialties which are not available in the public healthcare sector, like open heart surgery and all of the specialties which children need, which they cannot get. We bring in doctors from all over the world who volunteer their time and nurses away from their families to come and operate and work very hard, 12, 14 hours a day, to care for our children. And the third thing we do is humanitarian projects, child sponsorship. We built a cancer hospital for children in Beit Jala. We do summer camps, we do wheelchair distribution. So we also try to alleviate the needs and the hardships of children based on what the individual needs are. So we really have offices in 6 offices in the West Bank, 3 in Gaza, 1 in Amman, 1 in Beirut, and we're opening 1 in Damascus, inshallah, which will enable us to identify these children and to put them into a program and into a system where they can get the treatment that they need.
على أي أساس تحددون من يحتاج لمساعدة؟
Yeah, first they have to have a medical need which can be treated, which can be cured. They have to be under the age of 16, 17 years old. And their families have to have the social situation which they need help. If they're a rich family and they can pay for their treatment, then those are not cases for us. The vast majority, of course, in Palestine and in Syria and other places don't have the means to get treatment. So really, that's the main criteria. We are not an organization that's political or religious. We take any child, whether they're Syrian or Palestinian or Lebanese or Iraqi. We take any child, whether they're Christian or Muslim, Shiite or Sunni. It doesn't matter to us. We're a humanitarian organization and these are children.
لابد أنكم تتعاملون مع منظمات دولية وعربية. مع من تتعاملون؟ من الأقرب إليكم؟ من الأكثر مرونة؟
Well, we are dealing in Palestine, we're using the public healthcare sector, so we work with the Palestinian Ministry of Health. But we have lots of partners all over the world. Here in the UAE, we work with the Al Maktoum Foundation, Salam Ya Sagar in Sharjah. We've worked with the Red Crescent Society in Abu Dhabi. We work with Little Wings Foundation, which is an organization in Dubai. But in other parts of the Middle East, we have partnerships with organizations that bring doctors in or send medical equipment and send medical supplies. But we are an organization that implements our own projects on the ground. So we don't like contract out. So we have our offices, and when we want to do a project, we have our own staff who can do it, which makes it easier to be sure that we're efficient, that the aid gets to the people in need, and that our aid is not tied to any politics or religious motivation. It goes to the people who need it regardless of anything else other than what their humanitarian need is.
المتبرعون متطوعون هم عرب أم غربيون أكثر؟
We have volunteers from every religious and national background, and we're very proud of that. Our volunteers, of course, Palestine and Syria, and these are Arab issues where Arabs are more aware and more sympathetic. However, we have a huge number of volunteers who are American, who are French, Italian, British, German, Indian, Australian, New Zealand, Chilean, Mexican. It doesn't matter.
عدد المتطوعين كم؟
Thousands. It's impossible to calculate. So we have volunteers who come on missions to operate. We have volunteers who are host families.
وكله متطوع لا يتقاضى ولا قرش على أي عمل يقوم به.
The volunteers are volunteers. They're not paid. We have a staff, of course, of field workers, but that's a small staff. The organization exists through volunteers.
كم عدد العاملين الذين يتقاضون رواتب جراء عملهم، ومن أين تأتي هذه الأموال؟
Yeah, so we have 35 staff, including Beirut, Amman, West Bank, all over the West Bank, Gaza and the US.
هو مهم جدا، يعني رائع أن تخرج يعني ما يستطيع كل شخص أن يعطيه، يعني العائلة التي تستضيف الولد، الطبيب أو الحكيم الذي يستطيع أن يجري العملية أو يعطي من وقته، الذي يقوم ربما باتصال الهاتفي أيضا مهم. ولكن بالنتيجة ستيف أنتم تتعاملون بالأساس داخل فلسطين. كيف طريقة تعاملكم مع الحكومة الإسرائيلية؟ هل تقبلكم؟
I mean, I don't have a relationship with the government. I only enter and leave the country as my only relationship with the Israeli government and to have a permit to enter Gaza. But yes, we are a humanitarian organization. Our job is to get treatment for children, and we are not there to stand in front of tanks and to wave flags. That's not our job. I understand the motivation and the nationalist cause that people have who are participating in other things. That's not the work that we do. Our work is to identify kids and get them medical care, and that's a humanitarian act. We've not had any problems from the Israeli government as a result.
ولكن عادة يعني لم نرى يعني دائما هذا السلوك الإنساني من الحكومة الإسرائيلية. هناك كثيرون مرضى يمنعوهم من المغادرة، إيقاف على الحواجز، ربما تضييق عليكم على الذين يعملون معكم. هل يحدث هذا؟
Of course, this is a big problem that we face, particularly from the children, with the children in Gaza, because the services there are usually not available. For example, we built a cancer hospital in Beit Jala. Yes, but for children. And a lot of children in Gaza are not able to get permits to go out for treatment in that hospital because of the situation, because of the Israeli policy of permits and issuing permits and whether they give to people or not. Also, we've had doctors who we've wanted to send into Gaza who've been denied access as a result of the Israeli refusing to issue permits for them. So this does happen. And it is
ماذا تفعلون إذا حصل هذا؟ هل تحاولون التعامل مع مؤسسات طبية إسرائيلية كوسيط أو مؤسسات إنسانية مثلا إسرائيلية؟
Sometimes, yes, we do try that. But generally we try to go directly to the people who are responsible for issuing the permits and explain to them that they are, by denying a doctor a permit to go to Gaza, he's denying treatment for lots of children. And hopefully to appeal to them on a human level.
علاقتكم بالسلطة الفلسطينية كيف هي على الجانب الآخر؟
It's based strictly on trying to support the healthcare system there. There is no political relationship. We are not a political organization. We're not involved in Hamas and Fatah and these issues. Our job is to work in the government hospitals so children who need medical care from our doctors can get it for free. We don't work in the private sector. So therefore, we work with the Ministry of Health very closely because they're trying to provide healthcare services to the Palestinian people. And therefore, our job is to help improve their ability to treat their people.
التعاون معكم هو عالي المستوى، يقدمون لكم تسهيلات، جمعيات الإنسانية الفلسطينية إن كانت المنظم الرسمية أو الغير رسمية، هلال الأحمر وغيره، هل تتعاونون معهم؟
Yes, we do. We cooperate with most of the Palestinian NGOs in the healthcare sector and try to better unify our efforts. So because I think when you work together, obviously you can have a greater impact. The relationship with the Ministry of Health is to use the public hospitals and to train their staff and to provide services within the public sector. They welcome that. They appreciate it. It's making their work easier. It's reducing the cost of sending people outside and the hardship of people not getting treatment inside Palestine. And we also cooperate with other NGOs like the Hilal Ahmar, Red Crescent, who are doing a good job. But need help also, particularly in Lebanon, because in Lebanon, the Palestinian refugee population there, which is about 500,000, most of their medical care is being provided through the Red Crescent Society. So we had a mission there last week doing plastic surgery in the Red Crescent Society hospitals in Beirut, providing treatment for Palestinian and Syrian children.
اسمح لي روح لفاصل قصير، فاصل مشاهدينا، نعود بعده بصراحة مع ستيف سوسبي وجمعية إغاثة أطفال فلسطين. ابقوا معنا.
We have a huge number of children being injured in Syria, in addition to the huge number of children who need medical care for birth defects or for accidents, and the healthcare situation in Syria has collapsed. We can't allow a child to suffer as a result of not having money to be treated. This is not acceptable. Palestine is a country that I love, and it's a cause that I love. It's a people that I love. We find hope in the spirit of the Palestinian people, that they continue to struggle, they continue to sacrifice. Occupation is illegal. The issue here is what kind of resistance. I don't believe killing innocent people is legitimate resistance. However, I believe the Palestinian people have the right to resist the occupation.
علي عبد العزيز، عمري 14 سنة، ساكن معجل. أنا سافرت أمريكا، عملت عملية بمستشفى شيكاغو عملت عملية قبل سنة، ورجعت عادي، نجحت العملية ورجعت أمشي عادي.
قصي قبل ما تعالج كانت نفسيته ما مرتاحة، بقى ما يطلع على الدكان يشتري ولا يروح على المدرسة. الحمد لله بعد ما رجع من العلاج وتعالج وطاف، هسه من نفسيته عالية وبقدر يعتمد على حاله، إنه يقوم لحاله، يغسل، يتحمل، يروح على الدكان يشتري لحاله، يروح على المدرسة. هو ما يقدر يعمل إشي بالدنيا، ضل قاعد ونفسيته مكتئبة. ورجع من أمريكا الحمد لله نفسيته عالية على الآخر، وبيطلع مع أصحابه، بروح على المدرسة.
أهلا بكم من جديد. إذا جمعية إغاثة أطفال فلسطين والسيد ستيف سوسبي مؤسسها ورئيسها ضيفنا اليوم. للأسف ستيف اليوم يعني للأسف لأن سوريا بحاجة إلى مساعدة، أنتم قمتم بإنشاء جمعية إغاثة أطفال سوريا. ما هو هذا المشروع؟ كيف ستقومون به؟ هل بدأتم؟ ما هي المعوقات وما هو الطموح؟
So we have a huge number of children being injured in Syria, in addition to the huge number of children who need medical care for birth defects or for accidents. And the healthcare situation in Syria has collapsed as a result of the security situation. Our organization, as one of the main humanitarian organizations which is arranging treatment for Arab children outside, it's constantly getting Syrian kids coming into our organization who need treatment. Many of them are refugees without passports and without the ability to go to Europe or North America, so we have to treat them in Jordan or in Lebanon where they are refugees. In Jordan and Lebanon you have to pay for treatment. They don't do it on a humanitarian basis. So we're trying to raise funds.
لا أحد يقوم بالتطوع؟
Some doctors do, but not hospitals. And let's be honest, there's a huge burden in Jordan and in Lebanon.
ستيف، بأمريكا حتى المستشفيات تتطوع، يعني تقوم مجانيا.
For free. We don't pay for treatment in the US. That's correct. Yes, we arrange treatment.
وتدفعون في الأردن وبيروت.
Yeah, some of the doctors, they do it for free in Jordan and Lebanon, but the hospitals have to be paid. So we need funds because we can't allow a child to suffer as a result of not having money to be treated. This is not acceptable on a humanitarian level, and therefore our job is to raise the funds to treat these kids, and we've been doing that. In Jordan, we've treated nearly 20 Syrian kids in the past few weeks by identifying them and putting them into treatment places and raising money for them to get surgery.
ما طبيعة الحالات كانت؟
All kinds. There's war cases, children who are injured, children who are missing legs, and some kids who have birth defects and who have accidents and things like that. We don't care. We're not an organization that's going to say, I'm only going to treat you if you're injured by the Israeli army or in a war. We help any child who needs medical care. We don't ask them how you got injured, why if you need medical care, our organization will help you.
طيب، اليوم مثل ما طبعا أنت ذكرت، غزة في حالة يعني حالة فظيعة، قصف يومي، عدد الضحايا عالي جدا. أطلقتم نداء عاجل بسبب الذي يحصل من الهجوم الإسرائيلي العسكري على غزة. هدف منه، ماذا تستطيعون أنتم في هذه الحالة أن تقوموا؟
So in Gaza we have 3 offices. We have a staff of very hard-working field workers and social workers who are in the field doing their job to identify kids who are injured and trying to help them get medical care. In addition, we did last year 38 surgery teams went into Gaza through PCRF and operated on nearly 1,000 children. And we will continue to send doctors in to operate after the bombing stops and to respond to the medical and humanitarian needs of the children in Gaza, and to make sure that every child in Gaza who needs medical care will get the treatment that they need, either in their hospitals there through PCRF teams or going outside for treatment through the PCRF.
تتوقع الكثير من الحالات اليوم.
Yeah, for sure. We've already seen through our field work a large number of injured children who are currently in the hospitals in Gaza.
ستيف، بالنسبة لك مساعدة أطفال الفلسطين أو أطفال الشرق الأوسط، أطفال العرب، يعني هي ليست هواية، ليست يعني أغنية كما نقول بالعربي بدأت وتنتهي، هي صارت جزء من حياتك. أنت تزوجت فلسطينية، تزوجت السيدة هدى الخطيب التي للأسف يعني فقدتها لإصابتها باللوكيميا. أنت اليوم لديك فتاتان، نصف أمريكيتان نصف فلسطينيتان، تقول لي إنهما تعيشان في رام الله، تتكلمان العربية بطلاقة. ماذا يعني لك؟ ماذا تعني لك فلسطين؟
Palestine is a country that I love, and it's a cause that I love. It's a people that I love deeply, and I've committed my life to serving. I strongly, strongly believe that the Palestinian people are one of the most courageous and brave people in the world, and their spirit to continue to struggle for their rights and for freedom inspires me and gives me hope. If we're looking for hope today in the Middle East, and we don't find hope from the Americans, we don't find hope from the Arab regimes, we're not finding hope from the United Nations and from the Israelis for sure, we find hope in the spirit of the Palestinian people, that they continue to struggle, they continue to sacrifice for freedom, for their rights, and that they will not be subjugated, they will not surrender these basic human values and their struggle for freedom and for justice.
ستيف، هل تؤمن بأن مقاومة هي حق مشروع للفلسطينيين ضد الاحتلال؟
Of course, occupation is illegal. The issue here is what kind of resistance. I don't believe killing innocent people is legitimate resistance. However, I believe the Palestinian people have the right to resist the occupation based on, I would like to see a resistance which is more effective. I think, we've seen civil disobedience in India with Gandhi and with Martin Luther King in the United States. When you don't have power, and the Palestinians don't have the power to resist militarily, they have justice on their side. They have the truth on their side. They have world sympathy on their side. That is the power that they need to use to show that they have their rights and they want to be free and they have the right to be free in Palestine. I think the only effective way the Palestinians can truly resist is through civil disobedience and through those type of peaceful measures. I don't believe in violence, although I'm not saying it's illegitimate, but I don't believe it's effective and I believe it does more damage.
طب هل تعتقد بأن العنف على الجانب الإسرائيلي يدفع بهذا العنف على الجانب الفلسطيني أحيانا؟ هل تعتقد بأن أنت شفت ظروفهم الإنسانية كيف تؤثر على تحولهم إلى العنف؟
Yeah, I think the reality is that occupation is based on violence. It's based on force. When you're trying to control people who don't want to be controlled, you have to use force. I live in Palestine. I see soldiers, and I live with checkpoints, and settlements surround Ramallah and are all over the West Bank, built by force. So occupation is by definition violence. And when you create conditions of hopelessness, and when people don't have a future, young people who want to have a future don't have a future as a result of occupation, many of them turn towards violence as the only way for them to try to achieve their rights.
ستيف، ماذا تقول للحكومة الإسرائيلية؟
Well, I'm not a politician, but to the Israeli government, they have to understand that they have to share the land of Palestine. Israel and Palestine has to be shared, and that everybody should be equal. If you claim to be democratic, if you have human values, and you believe in democracy, democracy is not just for one religion or one nationality. You're controlling the land from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean. This is through occupation and through your sovereignty. You have to provide everybody equal rights. And you cannot have it both ways. You cannot be a Jewish state and control a majority of people who are not Jewish. It won't work. Then you're an apartheid state. They know this. And this is something that they are unable to deal with. They don't have leaders in Israel who have the political will and the courage to make this accommodation with the Palestinian people.
ستيف، جنة واسم بنتك الكبيرة ديما. أنت بتفهم عربي منيح؟
لا مش كتير شوية.
بس تقدر تفهم بشكل صح يمكن أكثر ما بتقدر تتكلم. ديما وجنة هم أمريكيتان أكثر أم فلسطينيتان أكثر؟
I think that much of their values are American, but a lot of their culture is Palestinian, They both speak Arabic fluently. They're both very proud, especially my oldest daughter now, because she has now more of a mature identity. She's a proud Palestinian, and she believes strongly in the rights of her people to be free. And she carries that with conviction. So my daughters I'm raising them both. to be Palestinian and to be American, and to take the good from both. You know, the individuality, they're girls, they should be able to do whatever they want in their life, not to be limited by culture or by society. And at the same time, to respect family, to respect their religion, to respect the country and the cause of Palestine. For me, it's very important that my daughters have these values as well. Freedom, justice, independence, democracy, tolerance are all values that I want my children to have. And they have. And
وستيف سوسبي هل هو أمريكي أكثر أم فلسطيني أكثر؟
I'm a human being. And I believe these days that, of course, I'm born and raised in America, and I'm proud to be an American. I'm sometimes ashamed of my government's policies and behavior, particularly in the Middle East and in Palestine. But I'm proud to be born in a country where I have such opportunities and I have freedom. But with that privilege comes a responsibility to stand with people who don't have the same rights. Especially those who are denied basic human rights by my government. And in Palestine, a lot of the oppression of the Palestinians is a result of American policy, American tax money supporting the Israelis.
ستيف، أنت قلت عن حياة وجنة بأنهم يعني أخذوا برأيك، أنت على الأقل تحاول أن تربي الفتاتين على احترام الثقافة العربية وعلى احترام القيم الغربية والقيم الأمريكية. أهم ما في الثقافة العربية أو القيم العربية برأيك ما هو؟
I think if you compare American society and Arab society, the family in the Arab world is much stronger and it's much more respected than we have in the United States. In the United States, we've seen a deterioration of families. I come from a broken family. 50% of the American households are broken. And the effect that has on society is very negative. You know, you have a lot of children being raised by single mothers, never had fathers. And therefore, that has a terrible impact on children being raised and on society in general. You don't see that in the Middle East. In the Arab world, there's much more respect for values, for family values, and respecting elders. And, you know, there's much more, I think, modesty that comes with just respecting people and respecting each other. In the US, it's becoming so individualistic now.
ستيف، لو بصراحة مثل اسم البرنامج بدي تطلع بالكاميرا وتدعو المشاهدين لمساعدة أطفال العرب، كيف؟
Well, through the Palestine Children's Relief Fund, we're giving people an opportunity to help in any way that they can. So we need people to volunteer to take care of our kids. We need doctors to go on missions. We need donors to make our work possible. If you have the financial means to support our organization, you can go to our website, which is pcrf.net, and donate. If you would like to volunteer and to help our organization in other ways, go to our website. You'll find ways to reach out and support the organization and make our work more possible. And the most important thing is that everybody has the ability to do something. It's not acceptable any longer for people to sit by and do nothing, or to just feel frustrated or angry about what's happening in Gaza or in Syria. You individually have the ability to do something positive and to help solve some of these problems that are going on in the Middle East. And if you are not active, if you're not doing something to help people, then you are part of the problem. By standing by and not supporting organizations like the PCRF and others, by doing nothing but complaining and being angry and shouting, you're doing nothing. You're not part of the solution. And these days, everybody has a responsibility to stand up and do something.
شكرا ستيف. مشاهدينا، رسالة وصلت. شكرا للمتابعة، ألقاكم الأسبوع المقبل بصراحة.